It has been a long day. The sky has grown dark again, and somewhere beyond it, the sun, the heart of yesterday's story, is resting after its endless work of light. Tonight, we turn closer to home, to the small blue world that orbits in that golden glow, the only place we know where life has learned to bloom. Let your body slow. Let your thoughts drift. The earth is still turning, quiet and patient, holding oceans, forests, and every breath that ever was. This is the story of our shared home, a planet born from fire and chaos, now wrapped in calm and color. You can rest now. The sun is sleeping, and the earth is keeping watch, far beyond any shoreline of memory. A pale cloud drifted through the galaxy, thin as mist and wide as a sea. It turned so slowly that time itself seemed to soften around it. And in that long, quiet gravity began its patient work. Astronomers believe that within such clouds, called nebulae, the faintest pull draws dust and gas a little closer, again and again, until closeness becomes warmth. At first, the particles only brushed past one another, like strangers sharing the same corridor of space. Then the meetings grew more frequent, the embraces longer, and the glow inside the cloud deepened. Scientists suggest that as material gathered at the center, pressure rose and the temperature climbed, a hidden ember forming where silence had once been complete. The swirl tightened. Rings of dust circled the brightening core, thin lanes of matter tracing slow paths as if learning a new dance. Each grain that fell inward gave up a little of its motion and a little of its cold, and the center answered with more light. What had been a gray veil became a soft lantern, and the lantern became the heart of a newborn star. The star did not shout its arrival. It breathed. Gentle radiation moved outward the way dawn moves across a sleeping field, and the surrounding disk felt that breath and began to shape itself. Near the warmth, heavy elements gathered, seeds of rock and metal settling like pebbles at the bottom of a clear pool. Further out, lighter gases drifted together in grander volumes, their gatherings slower, their bodies larger, their orbits spacious and calm. Between these regions, where hot and cold met in a careful truce, countless fragments circled and collided and softened their edges. Astronomers believed that here, in the balanced middle, the material that would one day become oceans and air began as simple dust, patient and unhurried. Nothing in this nursery rushed. Collisions were not violence but conversation, a quiet exchange of momentum that turned chaos into pattern. The disk thinned over time as clumps grew and cleared their lanes, each new body sweeping a path and leaving a faint wake behind. In the glow of the young star, the darkness nearby was not empty. It was being written upon, line by slow line. Scientists suggest that when a forming star reaches a steady burn, the space around it changes character. Winds from its surface flow outward, and the pressure of light itself guides the smallest grains away, while the larger pieces keep circling, bound by the pull that started everything. In that careful tension between push and pull, worlds begin to gather. What was once only cloud learns the shape of a system. This is the breath before a first word, the pause that becomes music. A nebula inhales, gravity answers, and warmth collects until it glows. Everything begins when stillness learns to breathe. And somewhere within that gentle beginning, A place for future oceans and skies is reserved, waiting quietly for its turn to spin. The newborn star glowed softly at the center of its cradle, light spilling across the thin disk of dust that circled it. Within that disk, a quiet sorting began, an invisible hand arranging matter by weight and warmth. Closer to the radiant core, where sunlight was strongest, heavy elements like iron and silicate gathered together. The lighter gases could not stay. They were pushed outward by the star's steady breath. The inner region grew dense, filled with grains that collided, melted, and fused into larger stones. Over time, these stones became mountains adrift in space, their gravity pulling smaller fragments toward them until they grew into young, rocky planets. Further from the sun's embrace, beyond the reach of its fiercest heat, the story changed. There, hydrogen and helium, the gentlest of gases, lingered in the cold, clumping into massive, billowing spheres. They became the gas giants, vast, distant, and slow. But between those two worlds, between the fire and the frost, lay a delicate corridor of balance. In that narrow place, temperatures softened, ice could melt without vanishing, and rock could remain without burning. Astronomers call it the habitable zone, but in truth, it is more like a breath held between extremes. Here, one world found its home, not too near to be scorched, not too far to be frozen. The dust that gathered in this middle ground circled patiently, colliding in silence until it formed a single body of stone and metal. The young planet shimmered faintly with the sun's light, its surface still molten, its shape still finding harmony. Over millions of years, its crust began to cool, its rotation settled into rhythm, and gravity shaped it into a perfect sphere. The third stone from the sun. This balance was not an accident, but the result of cosmic negotiation. Every push of light met an equal pull of gravity. Every excess of heat found its echo in the calm of shadow. In the measured stillness between those forces, the planet began to slow its restless motion, learning how to hold warmth without being consumed by it. Scientists believe that without this fragile positioning, oceans would never have formed, and the thin breath of atmosphere that would one day cradle life could not have survived. The sun shone steadily, wrapping its child in light, but never too tightly. Around it, other worlds spun, some scorched to ash, some locked in endless frost. Yet this one, this small blue seed, learned to live in the middle. Its path was neither victory nor defeat, neither furnace nor ice field. It was balance, pure and simple, written into the fabric of its orbit. Balance, like all rare things in the universe, is not stillness but harmony, the quiet agreement between opposites, between fire and ice. Earth found its way, a calm rhythm where extremes shook hands, and from that gentle meeting, the first promise of life began to form. Long after the newborn Earth had cooled and found its balance between fire and frost, another wanderer crossed its path. It was a world not much smaller than Mars, drifting through the same orbit, pulled slowly toward an inevitable meeting. Astronomers call it Theia, a lost planet, a ghost of the early solar system. When it finally touched the young Earth, the impact did not shatter the world. It reshaped it. From the collision came fragments that gathered into the moon, and from the force of that encounter, Earth tilted, just enough to change everything that would ever follow. The planet leaned, only 23 degrees from upright. A tilt so small it could be missed by the eye, yet powerful enough to define the rhythm of time. As it continued to spin, that lean made sunlight wander across its surface, sliding north and south in a graceful cycle. Where the light lingered longer, warmth came. Where it withdrew, cold and shadow settled in. This dance became the measure of days and the maker of seasons. It is said that if Earth had stood perfectly straight, the world would have been locked in sameness. A planet without the shifting of colors, the melting of ice, or the bloom of spring. Because of that gentle lean, the planet breathes. Every year, it inhales warmth and exhales cold, a pulse that keeps oceans moving and air alive. The tilt gives light a journey, a reason to travel and return. In summer, the sun climbs high and close. In winter, it lowers and hums softly through thinner skies. Each turn of the planet carries this slow heartbeat, steady and forgiving. The moon, born of that same collision, keeps the tilt from wavering too far. As if still watching over the world it helped create. To tilt is not to fall, but to find rhythm. The earth learned this lesson early, that perfection is motionless, and motionless things cannot grow. The planet's axis became its quiet imperfection, the line that makes time feel alive. Every sunrise owes its light to that angle. Every sunset, its return to shadow. Even the pattern of life itself, migration, hibernation, renewal, follows the path drawn by that small inclination. Thayer's touch was not destruction, but instruction. It taught the earth to lean, to sway, to trust the pull of imbalance. In the calm that came after impact, the planet began its long rotation through ages and climates, always tilting toward life. Perhaps that is the quiet secret of existence, that to move forward, one must lean into the unknown. The earth still spins that way now, slow and faithful, its axis forever marked by the echo of that ancient meeting. And with every turn, light and shadow trade places, balancing the world in a rhythm both fragile and endless, a gentle spin of time that never stops breathing. Beneath the calm crust of continents and oceans, far below the roots of mountains and the deepest mines, the earth hides a restless heart. It is not made of stone, but of liquid fire, a sea of molten iron and nickel that never cools, never sleeps. Scientists believe that deep inside, immense pressure keeps the metal flowing like a slow, glowing river. It moves in spirals and swells, rising and falling in endless patterns, as if the planet itself were breathing from within. This ocean of metal is the true engine of the world. As the liquid ion shifts, it rubs and twists against the solid inner core, and those motions give rise to invisible lines of force. They spread outward through the mantle, through the crust, and into the space around us, wrapping the planet in a vast cocoon of magnetism. It is called the geomagnetic field, an unseen shield that turns chaos into calm. Without it, the constant storm of charged particles from the sun would strike directly, stripping away the air and boiling the oceans. But the field bends those particles, guiding them toward the poles, where they dissolve into light. The auroras we see in the night sky, green, blue, and violet curtains waving in silence, are the gentle edge of that invisible protection. Every compass that points north, every migration of birds across the sea, every spark that dances in the upper atmosphere, all of it comes from that hidden current. The Earth's surface may seem steady, but it floats above a power greater than fire, a motion more ancient than any mountain. That power hums beneath every step we take. The continents drift because of it, volcanoes breathe because of it, and the very stability of life depends on the steady rhythm of molten iron far below. Scientists suggest that this motion has lasted for billions of years. Since the earliest days of the planet's formation, it is sustained by heat from radioactive decay, by the compression of matter, and by the slow cooling that keeps the core in motion. Yet beneath the facts lies something quieter, an image of strength that does not need to shout. True power, it seems, is not found in the things that glitter on the surface, but in what moves unseen, deep and patient. If the earth could speak, perhaps it would not talk about the mountains or the oceans, but about the rivers of metal flowing through its center, a pulse that keeps the planet alive. It is the warmth beneath our winters, the unseen hand that guards the sky, the heartbeat that has never stopped since the world began. Beneath everything we see and touch, that molten sea continues to turn, slow, constant, unbroken. And in its silent motion, the planet remembers its first fire. From that fire came gravity, magnetism, and the calm that allows life to grow. Strength, after all, has never been about what stands above. It is born from what endures below, from the quiet rivers of metal that have kept this world alive for billions of years. Deep within the earth, the molten core kept moving, a slow, rhythmic current of iron and heat that turned like the steady pulse of a hidden heart. From that motion came an invisible force, lines of magnetism that curved outward into space and wrapped around the planet. This was the birth of the magnetic field, the first shield of Earth. And though it could not be seen, it began to shape everything that would follow. The field bent solar winds aside, guiding them toward the poles. And in doing so, it saved the fragile world from the storm. Without that quiet defense, the newborn planet would have been stripped bare. The sun, though gentle from afar, breathes fire. Its light carries storms of charged particles flung across the solar system at incredible speed. But the magnetic field turned those storms into art. The trapped particles collided with the thin air near the poles and shimmered as curtains of green and violet light. The first auroras, a reminder that even violence can be softened when guided by balance. Above this unseen armor, another shield was taking shape. Volcanic gases, steam, and carbon dioxide rose from the young crust, and instead of drifting away into the dark, they lingered. The magnetic field held them close, allowing a fragile atmosphere to form. Over millions of years, the heavy air thickened and cooled, wrapping the planet in a veil that could hold warmth and water. Clouds began to gather, rain began to fall, and for the first time, the sound of liquid touched solid ground. The planet exhaled, and from that breath, weather was born. The atmosphere became more than a blanket of gas. It was a memory of motion, a record of what the planet had endured. It trapped just enough heat to keep oceans from freezing, yet not so much that they would boil away. It softened sunlight, scattered color, and made the sky blue. Each layer, troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, became a quiet guardian, filtering radiation, holding pressure, protecting the delicate chemistry of life that would one day bloom below. What is peace, if not movement in disguise? The planet's calm is not the absence of motion, but the harmony of it. Molten metal spinning below, winds sweeping above, both working in silence to hold the fragile middle steady. Every calm breeze that brushes a leaf, every soft night that shelters sleep, is a ripple of that ancient balance. Though we walk on solid ground, our safety comes from what we cannot touch, a magnetic rhythm born deep underground, and an airy embrace that circles us endlessly. Together, they form an invisible cradle, the quiet heartbeat of a living world. The earth does not wear its armor proudly. It simply exists within it. And like a sleeper held in a gentle dream, the planet is protected by what moves unseen, a shield of magnetism and air, wrapping the world the way a heartbeat wraps a moment of rest. The young Earth was still glowing, its surface a restless sea of magma and steam. The air shimmered with heat, and the sky was a haze of ash and gas. Volcanoes breathed fire, and the ground beneath them shifted like liquid stone. Yet across the emptiness of space, pieces of ice and dust were already on their way. Silent travelers born from the frozen edges of the solar system. They drifted for millions of years, drawn by gravity toward this bright, burning world. When they arrived, they did not come as gentle snow. They struck with force, releasing the cold they had carried through darkness. Each collision cracked the crust and sent steam billowing upward, while the ice melted into vapor and scattered into the sky. Over countless impacts, the fragments of comets and icy asteroids gave the Earth its first drops of water. Scientists believe that these frozen messengers brought hydrogen and oxygen, the ingredients of rain, the beginning of oceans. The planet that had once been only fire began to cool under a sky that was learning to soften. As the crust hardened and the air thickened, vapor rose and gathered into clouds, vast, silver blankets stretching across a world still glowing at its edges. Then, for the first time, the sky opened. Rain fell, not in drizzle, but in endless sheets, hissing as it met the molten ground. The sound must have been like breathing, steam rising, drops falling, heat surrendering to calm. It was a storm that lasted for ages, until rivers carved their first paths and shallow seas began to form. Through these rains, the planet found balance. The fire no longer ruled, and the sky no longer fled. Every drop that touched the rock carried away a little of its heat, and every breath of vapor that rose carried a memory of that exchange. Slowly, the world learned the feeling of coolness, a sensation it had never known. The oceans that formed were more than water. They were the planet's first sigh of relief. Above, lightning still flashed, but now its light was reflected in water instead of fire. The crust, once red and molten, darkened into basalt and clay. The air grew dense enough to hold sound, and the first winds began to whisper over calm surfaces. In this mingling of elements, fire, stone, and water, the earth took on its true face. No longer a furnace, but a breathing world. From dust and flame came something soft enough to cradle life. The oceans shimmered like mirrors to the newborn sky, and rain became a promise that even from heat and chaos, gentleness can be born. The planet cooled, the clouds parted, and for the first time, Sunlight touched water instead of fire. It was the beginning of calm, the first moment the earth understood what it meant to be alive. When the storms of creation finally softened, the earth exhaled. The skies that had once been thick with ash turned pale and wide, and the rains that had fallen for ages began to gather in the planet's low places. Valleys filled, basins deepened, and from the cooling crust, the first oceans spread outward like mirrors catching new light. The air, once harsh and sharp, met the calm of water, and together they found rhythm, evaporation, condensation, return. Each breath of vapor that rose became a promise that it would fall again, feeding a cycle older than any life that would come to depend on it. Scientists believe that these early oceans carried the memory of the atmosphere's first breath. Carbon, nitrogen, and the faint trace of salt born from volcanic stone. The water dissolved minerals from the rocks it touched, learning their stories, carrying them across the globe. With every wave, the oceans began writing, carving, and shaping the face of the young planet. Tides rolled against shorelines that were still shifting, and in that motion, the world found its first pulse. The sea began to beat like a slow heart, its rhythm marking time before the word time had meaning. In the dim light of those early days, the ocean was both origin and archive. It held warmth at the surface and darkness in its depths. It stored the echoes of lightning and the whispers of cooling stone. Astronomers often say water remembers, and perhaps it is true. For the sea still carries hydrogen from comets, oxygen from rocks, and the chemistry of beginnings in every drop. What touches it is never truly lost. Every molecule that drifted in those primeval tides still flows through rivers and rain today. As the planet turned, sunlight began to trace patterns across the water, awakening color and movement. The surface shimmered with silver and blue, endless and alive, yet silent enough to cradle reflection. Beneath that calm skin, temperature and current began their slow exchange, carrying warmth toward the poles, cold toward the equator. This balance, born in water, would one day allow climates, storms, and seasons to exist, a quiet architecture of survival designed not by intent, but by motion itself. The oceans became the memory of the world, a memory that breathes. They gathered the sighs of the sky, the heat of the mantle, the dust of ancient rain. Every wave that breaks on a shore is an echo of the first rainfall. Every ripple beneath the moonlight is a whisper from the planet's youth. The sea remembers in motion what the land keeps in silence. And so, the earth learned to dream in blue. The oceans turned under the pull of the moon, their tides marking the slow heartbeat of a living planet. In each drop of water lies the story of how fire learned to rest, how air learned to listen, and how a world learned to remember. The oceans are not merely water, they are time itself, still moving, still alive, carrying the first memory of everything that has ever been. Beneath the quiet surface of the young ocean, something extraordinary was beginning to stir. The planet had cooled, the seas had settled, and in the shallows, where sunlight met mineral-rich water, chemistry began to dream. Heat from deep vents pulsed upward, mixing with currents of salt and carbon. Lightning cracked the sky above, its flashes echoing through vapor and sea foam. In that flicker of energy, simple molecules collided, joined, and separated over and over until one day, by chance or by patience, a strand of matter learned to remember its shape. Scientists believe that from these endless combinations, chains of molecules formed, fragile but clever, able to copy themselves before they broke apart. It was not thought, nor design, only repetition. One link becoming two, two becoming four, until the rhythm sustained itself. Each replication was imperfect, yet the imperfections carried possibility. The ocean became a vast laboratory of chance, filled with patterns that tried, failed, and began again. Among the countless attempts, one structure lasted long enough to begin the story of life. That first living spark was not grand. It had no eyes, no heart, no will. It was a single cell, enclosed in a thin membrane, floating in water that glowed faintly from the reflection of the sky. Inside, molecules twisted and unfolded in silence, exchanging energy like whispers between currents. It fed on light and minerals, dividing itself again and again, multiplying across the shallow seas. To the universe, it was a quiet ripple. To Earth, it was the first breath of continuity. The moment matter learned persistence. The line between lifeless and living is finer than we imagine. It is not a border, but a shimmer, the point where chemistry begins to echo itself, where motion becomes memory. In that shimmer, the young planet changed forever. No longer just rock, metal, and ocean. It now carried within it something that could respond, adapt, and endure. The difference was small, almost invisible, but its consequence was infinite. Life did not arrive with purpose. It arrived with rhythm. It existed because it could, because the conditions allowed it to persist. There was no intention in that first replication, no awareness of what would follow, only the gentle insistence to continue. The cell divided, the sea cradled it, and the planet listened. From that humble repetition came evolution, and from evolution came every future breath. Sometimes existence begins not with a spark of reason, but with patience, the patience of matter finding its balance in chaos. The same patience that keeps waves folding over one another, that guides stars to shine and fade. The first cell was the universe's quiet experiment in endurance, proof that persistence is its own kind of purpose. And so, the oceans kept their rhythm, cradling the fragile, luminous beginning. Within that shimmering blue, one spark copied itself again and again until the world learned the meaning of staying alive. For millions of years, the oceans kept their calm, carrying within them the quiet persistence of single cells. They drifted, divided, and drifted again, guided by light, heat, and the slow rhythm of the tides. Time passed, not in moments, but in breaths, deep, patient, uncountable. Within those breaths, life began to experiment. Some cells found comfort in union, linking together, sharing tasks and energy. What one could not do alone, many could achieve together. From this quiet cooperation, complexity was born. Scientists believe that the first multicellular organisms appeared in the seas, soft and translucent, floating like threads of moonlight in water. They absorbed sunlight, exchanged gases, and responded gently to current and temperature. They did not hurry. Evolution never does. It moves like erosion or wind, reshaping the world grain by grain. Within these small beginnings, some organisms learn to move toward light, others learn to follow the warmth, and still others found shelter in the dark. Each adaptation was a whisper, a tiny adjustment written by time itself. As eons flowed, the sea became a garden of form and motion. Creatures grew shells, fins, and senses. Eyes began to open to the shimmer of light above. Some rose to the surface and discovered a boundary, a film of air separating water from sky. To cross it was not a decision, but a gradual curiosity, a slow unfolding of need. Fins became limbs, lungs replaced gills, and the pulse of water gave way to the pull of gravity. What once swam began to crawl. What once crawled began to walk on land. The world felt new again, air-filled spaces that water could not. And sunlight painted the first forests and fields. Plants reached upward, anchoring themselves to the soil that had been shaped by the waves they once knew. Insects hummed through the air. Amphibians lingered between two worlds, unsure whether they belonged to sea or stone. Life was learning to breathe differently, to carry the ocean inside itself while standing under the open sky. Evolution is not a leap, but a whisper, a continuous murmur of adaptation and chance. Every heartbeat that ever lived is an echo of that murmur, from single cells to vast ecosystems, from water to land to air. The story has always been the same: survival through patience, transformation through time. There was no race, no winner, only motion. The earth itself evolved alongside its children, adjusting its climate, shifting its continents, creating new homes for new forms. Time became the sculptor, the unseen artist shaping what endures. Even now, the same whisper continues, in the rustle of leaves, in the breath of animals, in the quiet pulse beneath our skin. Life has never shouted its triumphs. It has always sung them softly, from the deep to the shore, from the past to this moment. Evolution hums like a song without end, a melody carried by time, still unfolding, still listening. Beneath every continent and ocean, beneath the forests, the cities, and the stillness of mountains, the earth is quietly moving. Its crust, though it feels unshakable beneath our feet, is a collection of vast plates, immense slabs of stone that drift slowly across a sea of molten rock. Scientists call this the theory of plate tectonics. But in truth, it is the story of a planet that never learned how to stand still. The crust floats on the mantle, a layer of liquid fire and pressure that moves in slow, circular currents. Each flow of molten rock pushes or pulls the crust in above it, guiding the continents like icebergs adrift on a glowing ocean. The motion is so slow that no human lifetime can see it happen, yet the signs are everywhere. Where two plates meet and press together, mountains rise, ridges push skyward by the steady patience of stone. Where they pull apart, deep cracks open, birthing valleys and spreading oceans. And where one plate slides beneath another, the crust melts back into the fiery mantle, completing the planet's endless cycle of destruction and renewal. This quiet collision and surrender shapes the surface of Earth, sculpting its beauty through motion unseen, long before the continents took their current form. There was a time when all land was one. Scientists call it Kennerland, the first supercontinent. Born from the meeting of drifting plates, Billions of years ago, its creation was not a single event, but a slow choreography, a gathering of scattered fragments drawn together by gravity and heat over millions of years. The plates met, fused, and folded into one great mass of stone. For a time, it rested as a single body, its edges surrounded by vast, silent seas. But even this unity was temporary. The mantle beneath it kept flowing, and what was once joined began again to drift apart. The continents still remember that rhythm. They move only a few centimeters each year, yet over ages they have crossed entire oceans. The Himalayas rise because India continues to press north. The Atlantic widens because plates beneath it keep pulling away. The world we know, the shape of coasts, the height of mountains, the paths of islands, is a snapshot of motion, a single frame in a film that has no end. Beneath our still lives, the planet breathes. The crust flexes and shifts, whispering through quakes too small to feel. Lava flows in chambers deep below, tracing currents that have never seen the light of day. The earth seems quiet only because its movements are measured in eons instead of hours. Yet, if one could listen closely enough, there would be a pulse, the slow heartbeat of rock against fire. Even the firmest ground is never truly still. The continents drift, the mountains grow and crumble, the oceans widen and close again. The planet's stability is born from its restlessness. Beneath the silence, beneath every step, the earth is alive, always moving, always breathing, shaping itself anew in the slow rhythm of time. The earth turns with a grace that few notice, leaning gently as it circles the sun. Long ago, after its fateful collision with Theia, the young planet was nudged off its perfect upright spin. That small tilt, just 23 degrees, changed everything. It gave the earth rhythm, light, and contrast. It gave it time. Because of that quiet imbalance, no place on the planet ever remains the same for long. As it travels through space, one hemisphere leans closer to the sun, bathing in long, warm days, while the other turns away, resting under the cool hush of winter. Half a year later, they trade places, and the cycle begins again. Every year, the planet inhales and exhales light. The tilt ensures that the sun's warmth moves, wandering from pole to pole, painting the world in slow, changing hues. Near the equator, that change is subtle, a shimmer of rain, a brief pause in wind. But farther north and south, the transformation is deep and patient. Snow recedes, rivers swell, forests return to green. Then, as the earth turns again, the light drifts away, and the same forests fall silent under frost. These shifts are not interruptions. They are the planet's breathing, expansion and rest, motion and pause. Scientists suggest that this steady tilt stabilizes Earth's climate, preventing extremes that would erase life's delicate balance. It distributes heat and cold, renewal and retreat. The seasons are not merely divisions of time, but the quiet machinery that keeps ecosystems alive. Plants know the angle of the sun as much as they know the soil beneath them. Animals migrate, sleep, or bloom in response to its rhythm. Even the winds carry memory, whispering from warm seas to cold lands, delivering the pulse of the planet across its face. From the outside, this might look like perfection, but it is not symmetry that creates balance. It is movement, the graceful exchange of warmth and shadow. Every shift of the sun's path is a lesson in patience. The earth does not resist change. It leans into it, trusting that light will return. There is a serenity in that tilt, a quiet confidence that renewal follows rest. If the world had never leaned, it would have been static, a planet of sameness, with no reason for migration, no invitation for growth. It is the imperfection of its axis that makes the earth habitable. The planet's seasons remind us that balance is not the absence of motion, but its harmony. And so, as it spins beneath an unchanging sun, the earth keeps time not with clocks, but with light. Every sunrise and sunset, every melting thaw and falling leaf is part of its eternal choreography, a slow, graceful dance between warmth and cold. Change, it turns out, is not what breaks the balance. It is how life remembers its rhythm. In the earliest age, the air above the young earth was thick and dim, a heavy veil of carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur drifting like poison mist over oceans of steam. Sunlight could barely reach the surface. The sky was not blue, but copper and grey, flickering with the dull glow of volcanic fire. The air hissed with storms of ash, and the planet breathed heat instead of oxygen. Yet even in that haze, life had begun its patient work, small, unseen, and tireless. Deep within shallow seas, tiny cyanobacteria floated near the surface, drawing in sunlight and releasing something new into the air: oxygen. It was not planned, not deliberate, but an accident of chemistry that would alter everything that came after. The process was simple. Take light, divide water, release breath, and over countless generations, those microscopic beings filled the sky with their quiet gift. Slowly, the toxic haze began to fade. What was once hostile began to soften. The light that had been muffled by sulfur and smoke now reached the sea, illuminating it with a color never seen before. The soft blue of air that could finally breathe. Scientists call this the Great Oxidation Event, but it was less an event than a transformation written in patience. Oxygen accumulated over eons, bonding with metals in rock, dissolving in water, saturating the world molecule by molecule. The planet changed from within as well as above. Rust-colored minerals spread across the crust, silent evidence that the earth had begun to inhale differently. The cyanobacteria continued their gentle labor, unaware that they had changed the destiny of every living thing that would ever exist. As the air grew rich in oxygen, another miracle followed. High above the surface, sunlight began to interact with the new gas, forming a thin, protective layer of ozone. For the first time, the harsh ultraviolet rays that had once scoured the planet were absorbed before they could reach the ground. The sky, once a shroud, became a shield. Beneath it, water could shimmer safely, and life could rise closer to the surface without fear of being burned away. When the light filtered through this cleaner air, it scattered into color. Blue, the most delicate wavelength, spread across the heavens, painting the atmosphere with calm. That color, born of molecules in motion, became the voice of life itself. The blue sky was not merely a reflection of light. It was the soundless hymn of a planet learning to protect its own breath. Every breath we take is a continuation of that ancient song. The same oxygen forged by tiny cells billions of years ago still moves through our lungs, through oceans and trees, through every creature that calls this world home. The sky remembers where it came from, and in its gentle hue, it carries the memory of transformation, of a world that learned to turn poison into promise. The blue above us is not just color. It is gratitude made visible. It is the whisper of life guarding itself. The quiet voice of a planet that once choked on its own air and chose instead to breathe. In the vast theater of the solar system, every planet moves to the same rhythm, drawn around the sun by gravity's quiet pull. Yet, where a planet stands within that rhythm decides everything that follows. Too close, and sunlight becomes a flood of fire, stripping away oceans and air. Too far, and warmth fades into silence, freezing water into glass. Between these two extremes lies a narrow corridor of possibility, the habitable zone, a fragile middle distance where water can remain liquid and life can endure. By chance or by grace, Earth found its home there, suspended in the balance between burning and frost. Astronomers often describe this position as just right, but the truth feels deeper than that. The planet's orbit is not a line of luck. It is a sanctuary written in motion. Every year, Earth drifts along its elliptical path, sometimes a little closer, sometimes a little farther, yet always within the bounds where sunlight can warm without destroying. It is a relationship of tension and trust, the pull of gravity holding the planet steady while radiation presses outward. Both forces locked in a silent agreement that allows oceans to shimmer and clouds to rise. Because of this distance, water on Earth remains in all its forms: ice, liquid, and vapor, constantly cycling through air and stone, sky and sea. It cools the planet when light grows harsh, warms it when shadow deepens, and carries the memory of balance through every tide. Rivers carve paths to the ocean. Rain returns to the ground. And the same molecules that once fell on molten rock now move gently through forests, storms, and the veins of living things. This quiet continuity is what distance provides. Time enough for change, space enough for peace. Other worlds were not so fortunate. Venus, too close to the sun, was consumed by heat. Its skies filled with acid and its surface melted into deserts of stone. Mars, too far, lost its air and froze its seas. But Earth, placed carefully in between, learned to keep its cool. Its climate breathes rather than breaks. Seasons unfold in rhythm with the tilt of its axis, and the warmth that reaches it arrives not as punishment, but as invitation. From this perfect distance, sunlight nourishes rather than burns, and darkness rests rather than extinguishes. It is tempting to think of safety as stillness, but the truth is gentler. Balance is motion maintained. The Earth's orbit, the tilt of its axis, the turning of its days, all are movements that protect rather than endanger. Each revolution around the sun is a quiet renewal, a reassurance that warmth and cold will meet again in proper measure. Between fire and ice, the Earth found its peace. It is neither the closest nor the farthest, neither the brightest nor the darkest. It simply is. The steady middle note in the song of the solar system. Distance, it turns out, is not separation, but salvation. In this narrow band of possibility, the planet learned to dream safely, and life learned to last. The sun, from this safe distance, looks calm, a perfect circle of gold that rises each morning with quiet certainty. Yet beyond its gentle light lies the storm. The star that warms the oceans and paints the sky with dawn is never truly still. Its surface is a sea of plasma, churning with heat and motion, where rivers of fire twist and collide. Every few minutes, loops of energy arch upward, then collapse in explosions so vast that entire worlds could fit inside them. These eruptions release billions of tons of charged particles, carried outward on the solar wind, a constant breath that reaches across the solar system. Scientists describe the sun as both creator and destroyer. Its warmth allows life to exist, but its temper can unmake what it once nurtured. When the solar wind strengthens, it strikes Earth's magnetic field with invisible force, shaking it like the strings of a vast, unseen instrument. The field bends, not breaks, guiding the rushing particles toward the poles. There, in the cold and dark, those particles meet the atmosphere and burst into color: green, blue, violet, and rose, the aurora, Earth's silent defense made visible. Each wave of light in the polar sky is a conversation, a reply to the star's unending breath. The auroras shimmer and fade like calm after an argument, softening what began as fury. To those who watch from below, they seem like curtains of silk. To the planet, they are proof of endurance, a reminder that harmony can exist between force and resistance. Without the magnetic field's steady hand, the solar wind would strip away the air, leaving the surface bare like the deserts of Mars. Instead, the planet learned how to listen, how to yield just enough to survive the storm. Even in its calmest moments, the sun radiates power unimaginable, its core burning at millions of degrees, its light crossing 93 million miles to reach this world. Yet when that light arrives, it is gentle. It warms the soil, stirs the oceans, and ignites the chemistry of life. The same energy that can flare into destruction also nurtures a leaf, a tide, a breath. This duality is not contradiction, but balance. The universe reminding itself that creation and chaos often share the same spark. Sometimes, on rare nights, the aurora can be seen far from the poles, spreading across latitudes where the sky is usually plain. Those who stand beneath it often describe a strange calm, the awareness of being between two vast forces, light and dark, power and peace. It is as if the earth and sun are speaking in a language made of motion and silence, an ancient rhythm of cause and response. The sun does not rage to destroy. It rages because it lives. Its fire is its heartbeat, its breath, its voice, and the earth, patient and wise, listens, bending but unbroken, turning that fury into beauty. Life endures not by denying the storm, but by learning its rhythm, finding warmth in the same light that could burn, and peace in the shadow of a star's gentle rage. As the earth turns, the sun drifts slowly from view. Its light, once scattered across oceans and cities, folds back behind the curve of the planet. What follows is not sudden darkness, but a soft retreat, a dimming of color, a hush that spreads from horizon to heart. Shadows lengthen, air cools, and the noise of day dissolves into something gentler. Night doesn't arrive as an ending. It descends like a breath released after holding too long. The planet, forever in motion, creates this rhythm, the balance between illumination and rest. In the quiet that follows sunset, The earth exhales, trees slow their exchange of air, animals find stillness, and even the oceans seem to breathe more softly. Scientists call it circadian rhythm, the biological pulse that all life shares, tuned to the turning of the planet. From the smallest plankton to the human heart, everything responds to the rise and fall of light. When day fades, cells shift, senses calm, and thought gives way to dreaming. This pattern has existed since the first creatures learned to float in the shallows, drifting under sunlight and moonlight in equal measure. The planet's rotation, constant and unseen, keeps time for all who live upon it. To the human eye, night may appear empty, but it is filled with motion. Above, the stars return, ancient and unhurried. The same constellations that guided travelers thousands of years ago still trace their slow arcs across the sky. The moon rises and sets, pulling at the tides, reminding the oceans of the sun's hidden gravity. Even the air shifts as temperature changes, creating the soft winds that carry scent and sound farther than in daylight. Every part of the world, in its silence, remains alive. There is comfort in this darkness, a sense of shelter that light cannot give. When the world is bright, everything competes to be seen. When it is dark, everything learns to listen. Night teaches patience. It asks us to surrender sight and trust in rhythm. In the absence of glare, reflection deepens. Our thoughts slow until they move at the same pace as the stars. Perhaps this is why, across cultures and ages, humanity has always looked upward after sunset, searching for meaning in the quiet geometry of light scattered through infinite space. The night is not the opposite of day, but its companion. Together, they form the heartbeat of the planet, a steady alternation between awareness and rest. Without darkness, light would have no place to return to. Without stillness, motion would lose its measure. The turning of the earth ensures both, endlessly, effortlessly. When sunlight sleeps, the world does not vanish. It simply changes form. The dark becomes a roof under which all living things can dream safely. Beneath it, the pulse of the earth continues, slow and steady. Nightfall is not a curtain closing, but the other half of a breath, the pause that makes the next sunrise possible. In the heart of the sun, a quiet exhaustion is slowly unfolding. For billions of years, it has burned with perfect balance, hydrogen fusing into helium, releasing the light that warms our world. But even stars grow old, deep within its core. The fuel that once seemed endless is beginning to fade. Each fusion reaction grows harder to sustain, and the delicate equilibrium that has held for ages begins to shift. Gravity pulls inward, pressure pushes outward, and the balance trembles like a held breath. When the hydrogen finally runs low, the sun will change its rhythm. Its core will contract, growing hotter, and in that rising heat, helium will ignite. The new fire will push outward, forcing the outer layers to expand far beyond their current reach. The sun will swell into a red giant, vast, bright, and unrecognizable. Its surface will stretch toward the orbit of Mercury and Venus, swallowing them whole. And Earth will feel the touch of that growing flame. The blue oceans will boil away, the air will thin, and the surface will glow red beneath the swollen sky. Scientists believe this transformation will not come suddenly, but over millions of years. Slow enough that no one moment can be called the end. As the sun expands, its light will redden, softening into a dim, ominous glow. Shadows will vanish, and the sky will shimmer with dust and heat. The planet that once thrived in balance will lose its fragile protection. No atmosphere, no clouds, no tides. Only the memory of rivers etched into stone and the echo of wind that no longer moves. It is tempting to mourn this future, to see it as a tragedy written too far ahead to stop. Yet, in the language of the cosmos, such endings are not failures, but transitions. The sun will not die in violence. It will exhale, shedding its outer layers into space, scattering the elements it once forged: carbon, oxygen, iron, the seeds of future worlds. What feels like loss is, to the universe, continuation. The warmth that fades from our sky will become part of another. Every star must one day return its light. Even the sun, which has watched over Earth since its beginning, carries within it an expiration, a reminder that permanence is an illusion. The very atoms in our bodies, the iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, were born from stars that met the same fate long before ours existed. Their death made our life possible. So when that distant day arrives and the blue fades into amber, the Earth will not vanish without trace. Its dust will drift into new constellations, its matter folded into other suns, other skies. The light that once fed it will continue, scattered but alive. Nothing truly ends. It only changes form. Even the sun, in its final bloom, will give one last gift, to remind the universe that even light, for all its brilliance, must one day learn to rest. Far into the future, when the solar system drifts through the crowded arms of the galaxy, a small disturbance could change everything. The delicate harmony of gravity that binds the planets to the sun is not eternal. A nearby passing star, massive enough and close enough, could pull at those invisible threads. Astronomers call this the three-body problem, a cosmic puzzle with no stable answer. When three gravitational fields of similar strength interact, their orbits become unpredictable, their fates uncertain. In such a dance, even a single deviation can send one partner away forever. If that day comes, Earth might be the one cast adrift. A nudge, a subtle shift, and the planet could slip from its orbit, leaving behind the light that had always defined it. Without the sun's warmth, the skies would dim into gray, then black. The oceans would freeze from the top down, forming continents of ice across what was once sea. The air would crystallize and fall as snow. Cities, forests, and mountains would disappear beneath a white silence. The only warmth left would come from the core, the faint, stubborn heartbeat of the planet itself. Scientists believe that even in such exile, the Earth would not die instantly. Beneath the frozen crust, geothermal heat would remain, creating hidden pockets of liquid water. Deep below, in caves and trenches, microbes might endure for millions of years, surviving without sunlight, feeding on the planet's inner energy. Life, once born, resists erasure. It lingers, adapts, transforms. Even without day or season, there would still be time, long, slow, and dreamlike. Drifting through the galaxy, the Earth would pass by fields of starlight and dust, illuminated only by the faint glow of distant suns. It would no longer orbit, but wander, tracing a path that no map could follow. From afar, it would look like a small, dim ember, a ghost world carrying the memory of warmth. If another civilization ever found it, they might see the frozen continents, the relics of oceans, and wonder what stories they once held. There is a strange peace in this imagining. To be alone in the dark is not the same as being lost. A rogue planet still belongs to the cosmos, carried along by the same forces that once anchored it. The silence between stars is not empty. It hums with gravity, light, and the faint memory of every world that has ever moved through it. In that endless drift, Earth would become a witness, not to life as it was, but to what it once meant to be alive. The traces of seasons, carved into rock and ice, would remain like scars of sunlight. The planet would remember, even without warmth, what it felt like to glow. Perhaps this is the truest lesson of wandering, that even in exile, the journey continues. The Earth may lose its orbit, its oceans, its sky, but not its story. It would float quietly through the dark, carrying in its frozen heart the last echo of the sun, a reminder that solitude, too, can be a kind of survival. No matter how the story unfolds, whether the Earth is burned by its aging sun, cast adrift into the galactic dark, or shattered by a wandering star, the ending will never be absolute. Planets, like everything in the universe, do not truly die. They change form. The Earth may lose its oceans, its air, its green shimmer of life, but the matter that shaped it will remain. The atoms beneath our feet, the iron in its core, the carbon once held in leaves and bones, all will continue their quiet journey through the cosmos. When the sun exhales its final breath and shrinks into a white dwarf, the Earth may orbit it a while longer, cold, silent, and bare. Over time, the planet will drift apart, ground down by collisions and gravity, its fragments scattered into the interstellar sea. But those fragments are not lost. They will join the dust between stars, merging with clouds of hydrogen and helium that one day will collapse again to form something new. Another star, another system, perhaps even another home. The universe wastes nothing. Every ending is a rearrangement. Scientists remind us that the atoms in our bodies were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. When the Earth dissolves back into the galaxy, the cycle will simply continue. The calcium in mountain stone will become part of a comet. The silicon that once formed sand may settle on another world's beach. Even light, once scattered, never truly disappears. It fades into wavelengths too long for eyes to see, but still travels endlessly, carrying with it the memory of what once shone. From the cosmic perspective, extinction is another form of continuity. When life ends, it does not erase its presence. It imprints patterns into matter, energy, and time. The DNA that once replicated in ocean currents, the breath that once warmed the air, will leave traces that shape what follows. The Earth's story will be written not in survival, but in contribution, the quiet offering of its elements back to the universe that gave them. If one could watch the process without fear, it might feel like watching a tide recede. The water that leaves the shore does not vanish. It joins the wider sea. So too will the Earth, dissolving not into nothingness, but into belonging. What was once a planet of color and noise will become part of the soft hum that fills space. Death for a world is only a pause in motion. The universe does not stop. It transforms. The stars that die today will feed the ones that rise tomorrow. The dust that drifts between galaxies will one day burn again with light. And so, even as the Earth fades from sight, it will continue, not as a world, but as the pieces of many worlds to come. The end is never final. It is the silence before the next beginning, the moment when matter remembers how to breathe again. What once was stone becomes cloud. What once was home becomes horizon. In that endless transformation, nothing is lost. It only learns to change its shape. Among billions of species that have ever lived upon this planet, one learned to look up, long before cities, before words, before even memory as we know it. A small creature with curious eyes stared into the dark and wondered. From that moment on, the universe gained a witness, a fragile being of dust and breath that could not touch the stars but could name them. Humanity, delicate yet restless, became the storyteller of the cosmos. Through us, the universe began to remember itself. At first, the gaze was instinct, the recognition of patterns, of bright points that returned in familiar rhythms. Ancient farmers followed the rising of stars to know when the floods would come. Travelers traced their routes across oceans by constellations that seemed eternal. Slowly, observation became understanding. People realized that the heavens moved not by will, but by law. The time itself flowed with precision, marked by the quiet spin of the earth and the slow waltz of planets around the sun. Each measurement, each act of noticing, tied the human story to the fabric of the cosmos. Scientists often say that to observe is to participate. Every glance upward is an exchange between consciousness and creation. When we map the stars, when we record the fading of a distant supernova, we are not only collecting data, we are giving the universe a mirror. Through our perception, it becomes aware of its own vastness. Without minds to notice, the stars would still burn, the galaxies would still spin, but there would be no word for their beauty, no reflection of their meaning. In our eyes, starlight finds its echo. Yet, for all our instruments and equations, the act of looking remains deeply human. A telescope is only an extension of wonder, a way to see farther without losing the intimacy of awe. Each discovery, from the orbit of a planet to the birth of a nebula, carries the same quiet amazement that first stirred in our ancestors around their fires. We are fragile, yes, bound to a small world of soil and air, but within us lives the capacity to hold the infinite. That is our strange inheritance, to be finite creatures aware of the endless. When we gaze at the stars, what we truly see is a reflection of our own impermanence. The light from distant suns left its source long before we existed, and yet it reaches us still, patient and unchanged. In that delay lies the truth. We are always looking into the past, and yet in doing so, we touch eternity. Each act of observation is a bridge between moments, between what was and what is. Perhaps this is why silence feels sacred when we look at the night sky. It is not emptiness we hear, but listening, the universe waiting for us to notice. In our brief lives, we give it voice. We give it memory. Through our fragile eyes, the cosmos learns what it means to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, as we look upward, it looks back, not with sight, but with stillness, holding us in the same quiet wonder that first began the stars. For centuries, humanity has spoken of saving the Earth, as if the planet itself were fragile, as if its future rested solely in our hands. But the truth is gentler and heavier. The Earth doesn't need saving. It has survived collisions, extinctions, and eons of fire and ice. It has reshaped itself again and again, erasing the scars of catastrophe with time's patient hand. The continents have drifted, the oceans have risen and fallen, and yet the planet endures, not as victim, but as witness. It is we who are temporary. Humanity, for all its brilliance, is a flicker compared to the lifespan of stone. Our cities cling to a thin layer of air, our history etched into a sliver of geological time. When we burn forests, poison seas, and heat the sky, it is not a planet that dies. It is our place upon it that fades. Earth will heal, as it always has. The climate will shift, species will evolve anew, and over tens of thousands of years, the traces of our presence will soften into sediment and memory. Scientists remind us that the planet has seen worse. There were times when volcanoes blotted out the sun, when nearly all life vanished, when the seas boiled or froze solid from pole to pole. Yet, from every extinction, the Earth found renewal. Life returned, not the same, but persistent, inventive, unyielding. It is humbling to realize that the planet's recovery does not depend on us, but continues despite us. The soil will reclaim our ruins, the forest will grow where concrete once stood, and the air will one day clear of our excess breath. To save the Earth is, in truth, to save ourselves from our own impatience. We are the fragile part of this equation, a species clever enough to alter the world, but not yet wise enough to live gently within it. The balance that sustains us is delicate, not because nature is weak, but because our comfort depends on conditions the planet doesn't promise to maintain. The temperature, the air, the rhythm of seasons, these are gifts, not guarantees. There is no arrogance in caring, only perspective. To protect this world is to preserve the thin slice of calm that allows our lives to bloom. When we speak of sustainability, we are not prolonging the Earth's survival. We are extending our invitation to stay. For the planet, time will continue regardless. For us, it is a choice between awareness and absence. And so, the call to action is not an act of rescue, but of remembrance. We are made of this planet. Its metals run in our blood. Its air fills our lungs. Its gravity holds us to every step. To harm it is to forget what we are. Saving the Earth is another way of saying saving ourselves from disappearing too soon. The Earth will remain patient, enduring, whole. It is humanity that must learn how to endure with it, to exist as part of its rhythm rather than its interruption. Only then can we rest knowing that when the planet breathes, we are breathing with it, not against it. Every atom in the human body has lived many lives. The carbon that builds our cells once drifted through space as smoke from a dying star. The iron that moves through our blood was born in the collapse of a sun far older than the Earth. The calcium in our bones was forged in the same cosmic fires that lit the first galaxies, long before we breathed, before the oceans formed. These elements wandered the universe, fragments of ancient stars waiting to become something that could remember them. Scientists have traced the origins of our matter to stellar furnaces scattered across billions of light years. When massive stars reach the end of their lives, they explode, scattering their interiors into space. That debris becomes dust, fine, glowing, and full of potential. Over eons, gravity gathers this dust into new clouds, new stars, and new worlds. Out of destruction, creation repeats. The cycle is endless. Stars die so that others may be born. And in that process, the universe renews itself through change. We are part of that rhythm, small but essential. The latest arrangement of atoms in an infinite experiment of light and time. When we die, we do not vanish. Our bodies, like the stars that made us, return their materials to the world. The oxygen in our breath will feed trees. The minerals in our bones will settle into soil. Eventually, those same particles may rise again, into rain, into wind, into another life. The line between living and non-living blurs when seen through the lens of eternity. Death is not erasure, but redistribution. The quiet migration of matter from one form of being to another. It is comforting to think that nothing is truly lost. The warmth of a single heartbeat continues in ways we cannot trace. As energy, as memory, as motion, even the light we emit in our brief existence travels outward forever, fading but never disappearing, joining the great glow that fills the night. Every human, every creature, every grain of dust carries the history of stars within it, and someday will give that history back. In this vast exchange, the universe remembers. It keeps no names, no identities, only patterns, the arrangement of particles that once thought, felt, and dreamed. When our time ends, we do not fall away from the cosmos, we return to it. The elements that shaped our hands and hearts will once again drift among the stars, waiting for another beginning. Perhaps this is what peace truly means, to understand that we were never separate. We are the universe in temporary form, a brief concentration of starlight learning to see itself. And when the form dissolves, the light continues. We do not leave the cosmos. We melt back into it, like a dream returning to sleep, to live, to die, to scatter. It is all one motion, the slow breathing of existence. In the end, what remains is not the self, but the memory of dust and the quiet knowing that we have always belonged to the stars. The night is still, and the stars keep their slow watch. Beneath them, earth turns, steady, calm, like the rhythm of breath. Every mountain, every drop of rain, every living thing is made of the same dust that once glowed in ancient stars. You can rest now. The universe is holding you. You are home on this small and gentle world, drifting quietly through the dark. Sleep well, traveler of starlight. And if you're still awake, there's always another quiet story waiting.